Hello, my name is Kristen McCosh, and I'd like to welcome you to the women's panel on discussing sexuality and intimacy after spinal cord injury. As we all know, there's a lot involved in sexuality and intimacy, especially once we experience a spinal cord injury. But today we're going to focus on some of our personal issues and feelings. We're not going to be looking at the technical aspects of sexuality, including positioning and devices that are available. We're also not going to be talking about medications and things like that. We're mostly going to be discussing our feelings as women, getting re-involved in sexuality once we've incurred our injuries. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I was injured in a diving accident 25 years ago. I have a C6 injury. I've been married for 7 years, and I work at Spalding Rehab Hospital as a peer mentor, talking to other women about sexuality, intimacy, and other issues of living with a spinal cord injury. And our panel here today would like to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their stories.
Hi, my name is Santina Muha. I am the Communication Associate for the National Spinal Cord Injury Association. I also do some journalism and some modeling and little things here and there. I'm a T10, T11 para from an auto accident in 1989. I was 5, almost 6 when I was injured. And I am not married currently, but I do have a boyfriend, and we've been together for about 3 years.
My name is Liz Treston. I'm a C6 quadriplegic from a diving accident over 25 years ago. I'm a speech-language pathologist and freelance writer for Action magazine. I'm currently involved in a long-term relationship for about 7 years.
Well, a spinal cord injury can occur at any age, and depending on the age of onset of injury, people are at different places in their lives, in their sexual development and sexual relationships. And maybe we could talk a little bit today about where we each were when we experienced our injuries. I know for myself, I was 15, and I was in high school, so I was just beginning the sexual exploration stage of being an adolescent. So it was a difficult adjustment. It was an important time in your life in sexual development, and it affected my self-esteem and also my activity during high school. And I just wanted to get a little bit of information from the other women about where they were in their lives and development, and if they could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I was 5 when I was injured, so I was still in like the, you show me yours, I'll show you mine stage, but there was really no meaning behind it at that point. So once I was injured, sexuality wasn't really on my mind for a while. Just really no big difference to me at that age, either way.
Being injured at 19, I was also at the sex is pretty important part of my going out with my friends routine. But after my injury, sex and sexuality took a major backseat. It wasn't my priority. My priority at that point in doing rehab was more get back to my house, get back to school, get a job. Sex and a husband and kids were just not on the forefront of my exploration at the point, at 19.
So at every stage of our lives, we have different experiences in sexuality, and I know we just talked a little bit about where we were. Can we try to think a little bit about you, Liz, especially, like, did you feel a difference in being an older teenager in your sexual identity before the injury as compared to after the injury, once you got to the point where you began to think about sexuality again?
I still had the same group of friends after I got hurt, so there was still the same selection of males in the group. So it was different because they treated me different, but they allowed me to be safe because I knew them prior to having an injury, so they knew who I was. But then one guy had said, well, you're the same girl, you're just sitting. So that just changed everything for me. Those words were just, I'm the same girl, I'm just sitting. So it allowed me to begin to explore. I didn't have sexual intercourse with any of them. But there were, we kissed a lot, and I learned to find new places that I found that arousal, like behind my ears, my nipples, versus, before, I never really even thought of my body. It was just slam, slam, we're together. And So that was a different point.
So do you feel that you gained your confidence back as much as before the injury?
Eventually. It took a while. Again, sexuality and sex were not my priority. My career was first, and once that, I was successful in my career, I had my family, I had a great set of friends, everyone, was well liked, that my self-esteem grew, that I was able to say, oh, you know what, it's time for me to start investigating a relationship. A long-term relationship, nothing, that's not going to go anywhere.
For me, I had somewhat of an opposite experience from Liz, whereas also being injured in high school, but at a younger age, I felt like not that the people who I knew were comparing me to the way I was before, but I was comparing myself before my injury to after my injury. So it wasn't until I got to college that I really felt freedom to explore myself as a woman with a disability in a sexual relationship. Pretty much my high school years were just getting back into school and getting acclimated at home and really not focusing on dating or boys other than just being friends, because I really didn't feel like I had the confidence that I had before my injury. Because we all know when you're in high school, if you have a bad hair day, you don't want to go to school. Never mind if you're in a wheelchair. I didn't want to have anything to do with dating or boys, or I just didn't feel confident enough to pursue that at that point in my life. It wasn't until I got to college that I really felt the freedom to be myself and be involved in a sexual relationship as a woman with a disability and a woman who used a wheelchair and had all those different things to deal with other than just being an able-bodied woman as I was before. And Santina, as being injured as a child, can you tell us when did you actually gain confidence in yourself as being able to get involved with men and feel confident in an intimate relationship?
Well, I was always confident in myself as a person. I never really saw any difference between my friends and I until the conversation got sexual, which was about 7th or 8th grade. Because, usually if there was something everyone was doing, they would help me. But now we didn't go there with sex. I didn't ask my friends, like, oh, I don't know what to do. Can you help me? So I just didn't know where to go from there. And I didn't have any other friends with disabilities at the time. So, I agree with you that about in college is where I think that, not just people with disabilities, I think kind of everybody at that age, it has almost started to find themselves, is confident in themselves enough to not make it, like a wheelchair issue, to kind of look at the person.
So I know we were each at different points in our lives when we had our injuries, and it takes a certain amount of time and also experience to get used to being in a wheelchair and being comfortable with intimate relationships. And I'm just thinking about other women who are injured at different points in their lives. There's no time frame, really. It really, there may be women who become re-involved 6 months after their injury. There may be women who take a few years. And is there anything that we could say to women who are, where it's been several years and they haven't really explored anything? Is there any thoughts we have on those sort of issues? I know, Santina, it was several years for you after your injury before you even thought about intimacy and sexuality again. As I said, you were young, but is there any thoughts that you have on that?
I just think with anything, it just takes, takes time. Whenever you're comfortable, I don't think there's a rush. I mean, unless you feel like there's a rush. I think probably a good tip would be to ask maybe another woman or peer who uses a wheelchair. I think that might be helpful, because like I said, only until I really started to see that it was happening did I kind of feel comfortable. So maybe that would help. Yeah, I remember when I was in 7th, 8th grade, people started asking me, like, can you have sex? Like, how do you do this? Like, what does this feel like? And at that age, you don't want to admit, like, oh, I didn't have sex yet, because that's not cool. But I didn't know the answers. So that was almost my push at that age to try stuff, but then I didn't feel comfortable yet. So I don't remember what I ever did. I guess I made it through, but that was a really awkward age for me. So I think I just kind of would join into the conversations with my girlfriends as far as, the things that I had experienced, but maybe just listen when they were talking about the things I hadn't done, and got really, uncomfortable at that age. But
Well, the whole experience really is a journey, and it begins the minute we have our injuries. And there are a lot of things we know we need to take care of before we can even begin to think about sexuality and intimacy again. We have to get our whole routines down. We have to learn to live with the injury, learn about our daily care activities, and things like that. And Liz, can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you, readjusting to just life after your injury?
Sure. After being injured, I wore a Foley catheter for over 20 years, or 15 years. And the idea of a man wanting to have sex with me with a tube hanging out of my urethra was I just didn't see it happening with the bag full of urine. And part of that, as I learned my own body, was that, well, the more independent I became, the more I was able to feel closer to my own body. I was able to do a little bit more for myself. So if I could do this, then I could do something else. And obviously, Foley's or urine have nothing to do with sex in one way, but for women, having, if you're going to pee or poop on your partner, that's a big deal. So you really need to learn to know your body, and that happens as you on the path of your learning your body, because it's very new. It's like a baby's body. You have to learn how to do everything all over again, how to eat, how to walk, if you're incomplete. So those are different avenues. I first started to take care of my needs because we need, as people with spinal cord injuries, to learn how to readjust our bodies to specific things like our bowel routines, our bladder routines, taking care of our skin. All of this becomes second nature eventually, but when you're initially hurt, that consumes you. Am I sitting too long? My bag is getting full. I haven't pooped in a day. And as a woman, sex was, that was just not up there on the priority list for my life until I learned how to take care of those things. And it was a long process. It's a path that we are all on, and no one says you have to go on this path at a certain pace. It takes a